A billionaire comes home late expecting silence. But instead, his humble maid looks him in the eye and says just two shocking words, "Shut up." What happens next will leave you speechless, and the reason behind her words will change everything. Stay with this story till the very end. You won't believe the truth waiting to be revealed. The grand mansion stood in silence under the midnight sky as the billionaire returned home much later than usual. He expected peace, calm, and perhaps a warm meal waiting for him. But the golden lights of the hall glowed faintly and the house felt strangely heavy. His footsteps echoed against the marble floor as he loosened his tie, ready to relax when he suddenly heard faint whispers coming from the kitchen. It was unusual at such a late hour, and his curiosity pushed him closer. The kitchen door was slightly open, letting out a dim light. Inside he saw the humble maid standing alone, talking softly to herself with trembling words. Her hands shook as she wiped away. Her tears and her whole body carried the weight of hidden pain. She clutched a crumpled piece of paper, her breathing uneven, her eyes full of sorrow. The sight froze him in his tracks, for he had never seen her look so broken. He knew something unusual was about to unfold. He stepped into the kitchen and the sound of his shoes startled her. She quickly wiped her face, lowered her head, and the paper slipped from her hand onto the floor. He bent to pick it up, but she stopped him with sudden force. Her voice shook but carried authority as she whispered, "Shut up. Don't say a word right now." The command stunned him. No one had ever dared to speak to him like that in his own home. The maid's voice grew calmer but remained firm. She raised her hand again when he tried to ask questions. "Please," I said, "shut up, just for one moment." Her eyes were filled with both fear and strength, and something in her tone silenced him completely. The room felt heavy with secrets, and for the first time in his life, the billionaire found himself unable to argue or speak. He simply waited, wondering what truth she was about to reveal. At last she lifted the paper with trembling hands and passed it to him. It was a hospital letter describing a child in urgent need of surgery. Tears ran down her cheeks as she confessed her hidden burden. The child was her younger brother, struggling between life and death, and she had been working endlessly but could never earn enough to pay for the operation. She had never asked for help, never spoken of her pain, but tonight the silence had become unbearable. The billionaire stared at the letter in disbelief as the truth struck him. Suddenly, every late-night tear and weary look made sense. She had carried this mountain alone in silence right under his roof. He felt ashamed that in his mansion of riches he had been blind to her suffering. Her command to shut up now felt powerful, for it meant he had no right to speak until he truly listened. For the first time in his life, he allowed silence to teach him. The maid broke down and fell to her knees, not to beg for money, but to beg for understanding. She promised she would work harder, even double, if only someone could help save the child. Her humility pierced his heart like a blade, for even in her despair she carried dignity. The billionaire felt his own eyes grow heavy with tears. He reached out, lifted her gently from the floor, and knew in that instant that he could not let her bear this pain alone. With a steady voice, he assured her that the surgery would be paid for immediately, and that the child's life would be saved. She shook her head in disbelief, unable to accept such kindness so suddenly, but the truth in his eyes filled her with hope. She covered her mouth, wept silently, and realized that for the first time, someone had truly listened to her heart. The mansion, once cold and distant, suddenly felt warmer than it ever had. That very night he made calls to hospitals and arranged everything at once. Funds were transferred, doctors were prepared, and within the next day the child was taken into surgery. The operation was successful, and life returned to a soul that had almost slipped away. The humble maid could not believe the miracle before her eyes. Her tears of sorrow turned into tears of gratitude, and she whispered prayers of thanks. The billionaire himself felt a peace he had never known, for his wealth finally carried true meaning. From that day forward, the house was never the same. The maid worked with joy instead of hidden grief, and the billionaire lived with compassion instead of pride. A bond of respect grew stronger than gold, uniting two worlds that once seemed far apart. The night when she had told him to shut up became a memory carved forever in his heart. It was the night silence spoke louder than words, the night humility overpowered wealth, and the night that left him speechless for the rest of his life.